In this presentation, you will be listening to information about the Savanna biome, presented by Kayla Brunick, Sophie Scandura, and Annalisa Pangaro. The savanna is located in the equatorial and subequatorial regions of Africa, South Africa, and Australia. The climate in these regions varies seasonally. Rainfall in the savanna averages from 30 to 50 centimeters per year. The dry season can last up to 9 weeks. The temperature in the savanna averages around 24 to 29 degrees Celsius, but varies more than in tropical forests. Some organisms that can be found in the savanna include scattered trees, which are often thorny and have small leaves, an apparent adaptation to the dry conditions. The dominant plant species of the savanna are fire-adapted and tolerant of the seasonal drought. Grasses and forbs, which are small non-woody plants, make up most of the ground cover. Large plant-eating animals, such as wildebeests and zebras, exist alongside the predators, including lions and hyenas. Insects, especially termites, are the most dominant herbivores in the savanna.
This is a food web that we constructed of producers such as grasses, baobab trees, and acacia trees. The next line in the food web are primary consumers or herbivores, with the exception of the tick, which is a parasite. The primary consumers consist of antelopes, harvester ants, zebras, giraffes, warthogs, gazelles, impalas, and elephants. These animals are eaten by secondary consumers, like rhinoceroses, leopards, hyenas, African wild dogs, and jackals. Cheetahs, lions, and tigers are tertiary consumers. The vultures prey on the carcasses of dead animals, and the oxpecker does not have any direct predators. From bottom to top, the trophic levels increase in number and the amount of energy received by the individuals in the previous level.
There are 5 main types of relationships and interactions in a biome. These include competition, predation, parasitism, mutualism, and commensalism. Competition is an interaction between 2 organisms that causes harm to both organisms. In the savanna, one example of competition includes lions and hyenas. Both lions and hyenas cover the same ground, hunt the same prey, and scavenge the same remains of animals. Due to these factors, they often chase each other, steal each other's food, and kill each other's young, which is also known as the practice of infanticide. Although the average lion may be larger and stronger than the average hyena, hyenas normally outnumber the lions and use that to their advantage. By doing this, the hyenas and lions often come into conflict over prey, which can cause harm to both species. Predation is the act of preying upon another organism. In the savanna, one example of predation is between wild dogs and gazelles. Gazelles are a type of antelope and are herbivores that travel in herds. The smaller and younger species of gazelles are more often preyed upon. Wild dogs hunt gazelles by chasing them over a long period of time. Their hunts end in a kill 80% of the time, compared to a lion's success rate of 30%. Predation is necessary because it allows for a natural population control. For example, if there were no predators of gazelles, this would lead to an overpopulation, and eventually the gazelles would not have enough resources to survive because there would be too many of them. Parasitism is the relationship in which the parasite harms the host. One example of this is ticks and elephants. Ticks are parasites that attach themselves to elephants and suck their blood. The elephants are being harmed, whereas the ticks are being fed. Parasites themselves do not have the ability to survive on their own and therefore need a host to survive. On this host, the parasite is able to feed, grow, and multiply. Mutualism is when 2 different organisms help each other and work together in order to benefit themselves. For example, the rhinoceros and oxpecker have a mutualistic relationship. The oxpecker lives on the rhinoceros's body and feeds on its ticks, horsefly larvae, and other parasites. In return for the food and housing, the oxpecker warns the rhinoceros of danger with chirping or hissing. Commensalism is a relationship in which one organism benefits while the other organism is unaffected. One example of this in the savanna is a relationship between lions and vultures. The lions kill prey, and once they are done feeding, they leave the carcass behind. The vultures follow the lions in order to feed off the leftover carcass. The lions are unharmed by this practice, and the vultures benefit by getting food.
Patterns of dispersion are ways in which individuals are spread out in an area. There are 3 types: clumped, uniform, and random. Clumped dispersion is when individuals in an area are grouped near a single resource, or they do it for protection, leaving some spaces with no individuals. Of the 3 types of dispersion patterns, this is the most common. An example of this pattern in the savanna is the Maasai giraffe. Typically, you won't find one alone in the savanna. They clump together in smaller herds for protection and gather around watering holes during the hot, dry summer.
Many species do this due to social behaviors. In addition to protection, clump dispersion makes it easier to find companions and establish a natural leader.
Uniform dispersion is when individuals in an area are evenly distributed or spread out. An example of this in the savanna are the dama gazelle. You may see a herd spread out in an area that has a lot of grass. Even though they travel in herds, similar to the Maasai giraffe, they are still considered as a uniform distribution.
Animals typically display this type of dispersion as an act of territoriality, which means that they defend a certain amount of space from other species for themselves.
Random dispersion is when there is no apparent pattern in the way individuals are spread out in an area. 2 examples in the savanna are the baobab tree and the acacia tree. Both have seeds that are carried by the wind or animals and are distributed at random areas.
Baobab trees relied on 2 species of tortoises for seed dispersal. Centuries ago, the tortoises went extinct, which reduced the opportunities the seeds had to travel to a new germination site. This led to fewer baobab trees growing in the savanna.
A survivorship curve is a graph showing the proportion of individual survival rates. One example of survivorship curve type 2 in the savanna would be the meerkat. The meerkat produces many offspring at multiple times of the year. In addition, meerkats mature early in life, and compared to organisms in survivorship curve 1, the meerkat has a much shorter lifespan. All of these characteristics combine to place the meerkat in type 2.
Biogeochemical cycles in savanna include nitrogen, carbon, and water. For nitrogen, there are many processes that allow mostly low nutrient areas like savannas to have particular hotspots with rich and fertile land. Termites concentrate nutrients around termite mounds. Large animals like elephants or lions can spread nitrogen around, which can encourage plants with higher nutrient content to keep growing. Trees like acacias increase soil nitrogen levels by pumping the nitrogen they find deep down in the soil up to the surface where they can use it. Hotspots develop around waterholes due to animal droppings. New grass is rich in nitrogen, which encourages animals to graze on it, which leads to them leaving scat and therefore fertilizing the soil further. The carbon cycle begins in photosynthesis in plants like grass and the acacia tree, where they take in carbon dioxide and convert it to sugars where they can transfer to primary consumers. The carbon is spread through the food chain as secondary consumers eat the primary consumers and tertiary consumers eat the secondary consumers. Those animals release carbon into the air through cellular respiration when they breathe. Decomposers like termites and bacteria break down organic matter and therefore release carbon dioxide and water back to the environment. As animals decompose, carbon goes into soil and rocks. This is the carbon used in fossil fuels, which gets burned often due to the many fires in savannas and are released back into the environment. The water cycle is very important to the savanna biome, even though it barely rains there. The savanna spends 4 to 8 months in a drought, so rain in the summer is very crucial, since it needs all the water it can get. Plants and animals are adapted to cope and even flourish with annual droughts. At the end of the dry season each year, floods bring life to the savanna. Water pours into drying waterholes and provides water to areas that do not have direct rainfall. An example of a human disturbance in a savanna is when, in 2006, a team of researchers were tracking savanna-dwelling elephants in Myanmar for 3 years. They soon began noticing that out of the 19 elephants they were tracking, many had been dropping off the map. After investigating further, they realized that the elephants had been skinned. This arises a new problem, that elephants are now being poached for their skin. When humans were just killing elephants for ivory, the population of elephants in savannas had dropped 30% in the past 7 years. But now that they are being killed for skin too, their population could decrease even more drastically.